I wanted to climb Everest, but I did not know why. I kept asking, why do I want to climb? But I just know that I couldn't give up. I've come so far, and whatever happens, happens.
Leadership wasn't something that I set out to achieve. I just wanted to put my head down and just focus on the climbing. I really had to sort of remind myself that I had a dual role. So I had to, yes, climb the mountain, but I also had a team to look out for.
The journey to success can be rather lonely. People don't celebrate with you until you're successful. In that 5 years, colleagues were asking me, why are you doing this?
Welcome to another episode of Rewrite the Rules. And as you know, we are all about rewriting the rules. So today with me, I don't have one or two, but I have three guests. And they're special because they are three members of Singapore's Women Everest team. They were the first women's team. Until date, they continue to be the only women's team who've climbed Everest. So instead of me introducing them, I thought, okay, I'm going to firstly ask them to start introducing. So who wants to start?
Thank you, Ritu, for having us. I'm Jane. I am the Global Head of Innovation for a food and agricultural commodities trading company.
Okay.
And I'm Hui. I'm very happy to be here as well. I'm the Director of Underwriting Solutions for the Life and Health business in S3E11.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Peh Gee. Thank you for having us here. I'm in the midst of creating a business to help people achieve clarity through using metaphysics.
Lovely. Metaphysics.
Yes.
I want to start by asking you, when did it start and where did it start?
So the story really begins in 2004. I was a uni student in NUS. So together with three other women from our university climbing team, we were really excited about our sport. And we thought, hey, there hasn't been Singaporean women on the summit of Mount Everest. So we decided to form a team of women to go climb Everest, right? And we wanted to expand the net a little bit. So we put out an open casting call in the Straits Times saying, hey, if you're interested in climbing, regardless of your experience level, here's our email address, sign up. And we had about 50 women from all walks of life signing up. And so from there was a 5-year process of selection and training. And it was very intentional that by the end of this journey, we would have a small team of 6. And so we started with, for our very first climb, we started with 35 women. And then by the time we got to Everest in 2009, we selected down to our final team of 6.
Wow. Yeah. And then finally, how many of you did you make it to the summit?
So 5 out of 6 of us submitted,
Wow.
which was a really, really good statistics for a team that is trying to summit Mount Everest.
That's great.
Yeah. And actually, the one person that didn't make it, it was really an unfortunate incident for her. Just basically, she had an inflammation of her costal muscles.
Oh.
And then that just made her summit attempt really, really hard. But actually, she's just as strong as all of us. So before we set off, we kind of said like, no matter how many people submit, as long as we have one person on the summit and everyone returns safely, that would be that would be our team goal already achieved. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. So I'm curious, right? You said you opened
Casting call.
Yes, casting call, and people just applied and people from all walks of life came together. So it's not like you formed a team with people you knew from before. How was that experience of suddenly now training for 4 years or 5 years with people who were different, who you didn't know, maybe with some you didn't have any commonalities? How did that process work?
So I think at the start, by design, we wanted the team to be on even footing, right? And so I think we wanted to say, if this is going to be a historic attempt, we would like to go into the attempt by saying, anyone who's interested, we would want you to have this platform and come with us, right? This is a great opportunity to maybe help someone else who has the same dream of climbing Everest, fulfill it together.
Yeah.
So I think by design, we anticipated that would be people of different age groups, different backgrounds. And we did understand that, planning logistics or coming together for training would necessarily be a little bit more complicated. But I think that was something that, we were willing to work with as a team.
Right.
The other thing to note was that because we knew that all of us would be coming from different backgrounds and would have a different level of experience, we would likely need to over-index on training, knowing that there will be a gap in sort of experience level, right? So some of us had previous climbing background, and then we had a teammate, Esther, who had never seen snow prior to joining the team. And she reached the summit of Everest, right?
Wow.
And so there was a whole range of background prior to joining. And so given that, we did plan and say that, hey, we're going to need at least 4 or 5 years to bring everybody up to the same level. So I think, the fact that we had a methodical training program over a significant period of time also took into account the fact that we wanted to give a broad group of people a chance to make it.
Wow. I'm just thinking that, of course, you trained for so many years and then you finally made it. But tell me a little bit more in terms of what were some of the differences that you saw in the team. It can't be that you didn't have any conflicts or there weren't any, arguments or difference of opinion. Like, give me some stories from there.
I would say that all of us have really different personalities. Yeah, and I would say that individually, each of us are very strong leaders on our own.
Yeah.
So to really come together to have a consensus means that every one of us must be heard.
Yeah.
So in coming together, we voice out our disagreements and we also come together to have a common consensus. Yeah.
Well, but I think there were learnings along the way, right? So I think in our team meetings, and this happened like every week, every year for 5 years.
Yes.
On top of training.
Yes.
And there are obviously, like what Peh Gee said, there are like people who are more extroverted, they talk a lot. And then there are people who are more introverted and maybe they just keep quiet and they listen, right?
Yeah.
But the thing is, like what Peh Gee said, making sure everyone's heard means that we have to realize that someone's not been speaking up for a while and we have to ask them like, hey, what are you thinking about this particular topic that we're discussing? And I think that's very, very deliberate. And maybe in the beginning, we didn't really, consciously do it. But over time, I think we learned to do that. And also, I think giving that safe space for the team member to also feel like, hey, I can also speak up. I don't have to wait to be asked. I think that also was a learning journey for some of our more introverted teammates.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And this practice continued through our climbing season. We build it into our routine, whereby we have an evening debrief every day.
Wow.
That helps a lot because in the day, there's a lot of things that could have happened. And we kind of like have the daily debrief to make sure that everything has been sorted out.
See, what you said is that if you have a team member, they are always extroverts in a team, right? So if they speak up, but if you have some quiet members, how do we kind of bring them into the conversation? I think that's such a life lesson all of you learned, right? Because that's what a lot of corporates or a lot of teams miss, that of including everybody or, building stronger teams by getting everybody's voices heard.
And I think on the topic of sort of making sure people's voices are heard, right? I think I want to come back to what Hui said earlier when she talked about, reaching the summit and how even if one of us is successful, the whole team is successful. I think within our team, what was really strong was the concept of we're a team versus a collection of individuals. Because as Peh Gee mentioned, right, everybody was very strong-willed. Because I think, if you're someone who decides to go climb Everest, you're probably not a wallflower.
No.
And so naturally, we would have differences of preferences and differences of opinions. But I think typically when that happens, I think we tend to fall back on, what is the best decision as a team? Putting aside your personal preferences, right?
Again, that's such a life lesson. And I love the fact that you said is that we were not a group of individuals, but we were a team, even though you came from different places, right? I want to get back to what was the feeling when you finally reached there? Tell me that.
For me, it is a case whereby I had to remind myself that I need to get back down safely. Yeah, because going up is just half the journey.
Yeah.
Coming back down safely in one piece is the more important journey.
Yeah. So that's a rational mind saying, okay, I've got here, but I also need to go down safely.
Yes, correct.
Was there like this big purpose or a sense of I want to achieve this by climbing Mount Everest? Sometimes it's also, it's metaphorically, right? You think, okay, if I climb Mount Everest, I would have overcome this big thing in my life or something. Was that, or was it just like physical, I need to get there?
For me, it's a very strange thing because I know I wanted to climb Everest, but I don't know why. And this happened throughout my journey of climbing Everest. Even when I was training for it and I kept asking, why do I want to climb Everest? I couldn't find my why.
Yeah.
But I just know that I couldn't give up.
Wow.
So when I reach the summit, I do not feel that there is this thing that I've accomplished and things like that. Because on my mind, I had made sure I come back down safely.
Okay.
Yeah. However, I would say that throughout this journey the learning comes to me is at the end of my climbing, I realized that whatever I learned through this journey, it is a purpose.
Yeah.
The things that I learned from joining a team of strangers, the learning of building something together, the learning of going on when there's so much uncertainties and I do not know why. Yeah. All these are the learnings that I have gotten away.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Again, you said the journey was your purpose, not the destination.
Yeah.
You guys are just dropping these pearls of wisdom. Such a strong quote. Journey is the destination. Lovely. I love that. What about you, Lee?
I'm gonna say my story for why I joined the team is totally different from hers.
Yes.
I didn't want to climb Everest. I just wanted to do mountaineering.
Okay.
I wanted to learn how to do it because there was no one I knew around my circle that was doing it. I was intrigued because after graduation I went to Nepal, did this trek, and then I was trekking, looking at the snow peak mountains, and I'm asking myself, how can I be up there looking down rather than down here looking up?
Yeah.
So that curiosity kind of made me wonder and ask around to see how can I get involved in this more technical kind of approach where I can experience the mountains a lot more closer up front.
Yeah.
So then that's how I got to know the team. I joined it just for the experience of learning. And then over time, the team goal became my goal. And I think that was very prominent across all of us as well. We were all from different walks of life. There were people in 20s all the way to 40s, moms with 4 kids, or people fresh out of school, people just starting work like myself and wondering should I focus my energy on work or on, this
training.
adventure? Because I take a month off every year. And in the first few years of your working life, I'm not sure it's setting a good impression to your boss. So I think all of us had a lot of questions and we all had different motivations. But then year by year, as we went closer to our goal, climbing Everest became our team goal and something that we really identified with. And that was how I stayed on in the team and then embodied that. So actually, in a few days' time will be our anniversary. So 20th of May is the day that I summited Everest, and I was the first from the team to do it.
Great. When you were saying looking at the mountains, I could imagine, I'm Singapore's flat, right? And you go from flat to thinking of climbing Mount Everest. That's quite a hike. It's quite a hike. Okay. What is your story, Jen?
So I think for me, the challenge of Everest, I think there were really 2 components to it. I think the first part of it was the fact that, prior to the Singapore Women's Everest team forming, there were, 2 other Everest teams from Singapore. They were all men, right? There was one in 1998, and then there was one in the early 2000s, right? That was from the university as well. And so I think for me, it was always a question of, this is of curiosity, Lee Hui mentioned, right? Of, why hasn't there been? And if not, why not? And so for me, it was a matter of, I'm interested in climbing. And to many people, Everest is sort of, metaphorically, physically, it's sort of the pinnacle.
Yeah.
You could argue, there are different climbs, different routes, different technicality, but for the most part, right, it's a very symbolic mountain. So I think for me, the fact that it's a symbolic mountain, no Singapore female had done it at the point, it was a curiosity, right? So I think whether or not we could do that, it was a big question mark. And I think for me then, the second part of the motivation for climbing Everest had to do with a bit of history. So I think if you look at, climbing literature that's been written, right, I don't think any other mountain in the world has been so written about than Everest. If you're interested in the outdoor space, I think, and you read these books on climbing, I think you read through all these stories of people who have come before you and all these famous mountaineers and the famous, adventure stories. And I thought it was very magical to be part of that history. And I remember climbing through different sections on Everest, the Khumbu Ice Fall, the Yellow Band. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this happened in that year on that expedition, right? And now I am part of this history. And I thought that was a privilege. And I think that second part of being part of this storied history of the mountain to me was very attractive.
Wow. So I think all of you had the common thread here was that you all weren't sure when you started, right? So there's great uncertainty, ambiguity, things that, again, and I keep going back to the corporate world, but things that people are trying to work through, right? People, even today, people are not very comfortable dealing with things which are very ambiguous, which happen all the time. Actually, in the corporate world, that's what is happening right now. How did all of you at such a young age manage to deal with uncertainty and still be okay with it?
For me, dealing with uncertainty is something that I have to grapple with, even till now. It is not something that could say that, just because I have experience of Everest means I can deal with uncertainty with confidence.
Sure.
Having said so, what I remember and what I'm also using is that, what am I certain of? What are the things that I am certain of, and use that to deal with uncertainty? For example, climbing Everest, it would be the hours of training. I started from zero mountaineering experience. Yeah. And over the years, I just built up my skill sets. And over the years, I built up experience. I also have experience of failure, even on a mountain where I failed to summit one of the mountains. And that with me a great blow to my confidence of climbing Everest. But thankfully, I got teammates who reminded me that, this is not the end. Why am I giving up now? Yeah. So with that, it helps me to cope with the uncertainty or uncertain situations that lies ahead.
Right. There you go. With, again, another pearl of wisdom. You said, I have my certainties to deal with uncertainties. Yeah. You're right. When things are uncertain, the things that we can fall back on is the things we are certain about, like whether it's our skill set, whether it's our mindset, whether, and therefore all the trainings and all the reflections and self-awareness come in where, we can't control the situation, but we can control what we control and continue to work on that. I think that's a really cool way to look at it. I like
also
that.
Small wins, right?
Yeah.
So, as we had shared, we started, a lot of us, with no experience.
Yes.
But then it was a 5-year journey, and the journey was planned such that every year you climb a mountain of increasing altitude.
Right.
And before you go to that mountain, you would do sufficient prep or other kinds of trainings, either on terrain or ice climbing, just to make sure that you train for specific difficult sections on that actual climb. So I think each of these climbs, each of the success that we had on these climbs gave us like that little confidence boost to tell us, hey, okay, we've done this before, like we kind of know how it feels like. The next one would be slightly different, but then at least you have something to fall back on. And I think that helped.
Yes.
But you're exactly right, Ritu. Like we were all always questioning ourselves, like, could we really do this?
Yeah.
But having each other, I say, to me at least, really, really helped. Having a team and having a team that's open to share our vulnerabilities, right? So we were not afraid to say, I was afraid, I was feeling awful, I was, we're not afraid to, we don't have to show anything. Yeah, we just really give our vulnerable selves.
Correct.
And that made us feel like we're not alone, and that gives us the confidence to then go ahead and continue on, because everyone's suffering just like you.
That's right. No, it's so nicely said. When you're kind of facing that uncertainty, you also look back and say, okay, what are some of the small wins? And that again boosts your confidence to say, okay, now I can move forward because I have done these things and I've had success, and therefore every little success adds up for you to take that big step.
Yeah.
So I think that's really a great point. And of course, third one, like as you said, was also teamwork. When you think you're not alone in this, and that's, you guys are literally giving life lessons in how to build a great team. Jane, add on to that.
I think managing uncertainty happens to all of us, right? And like, be it on the mountains or at work or in the home. And I think we all have finite amounts of energy, right? And I think often a question I ask myself is, what am I focusing on in this situation of uncertainty? We fall into the trap of trying to control the outcome. That gets really hard and it causes angst. I think when it comes to managing uncertainty, if you accept that the outcome is out of your control, you can then focus your energy on your toolkit, with which I use to frame around the outcome, the training, the technical skills, right? Yeah. So there are things that we can put into our toolkit to help us best manage whatever situation happens. But a lot of it has to do with, I have to surrender to the fact that I cannot control the outcome, and I will have to focus on my toolkit.
Correct. I want to switch a little bit, because all of you now are also, like I said, it's been 15 years, you're all carrying on with your lives, work, personal. In what shape or form have any of the learnings that you had those 5 years and then, of course, going to the summit, how have you taken some of those learnings and applied in your lives?
For me, it's probably two parts. One of which is while I was with the military, after Everest, one of the things that I was doing was to be part of this team to restart the SF Volunteer Corps, which is a platform to allow people outside of the military to join in as volunteers.
Okay.
So there was a new venture. Very new. It's kind of, to me, it's a startup experience.
Okay.
Yeah, starting something like this. So it kind of give me that kind of recollection of coming together, bringing people who do not know each other and come together and build something together. Yeah, so that was one part of it during the time when I was with the military. The second part is what I'm doing right now. Is again something that's totally a switch from coming out from a structured organization to totally unstructured.
Yeah, that's total contrast.
Yeah, total contrast. Yeah, totally contrast. And what I'm right now doing is to really support people in getting the clarity through the use of metaphysics, which again is not a traditional way of getting your information. Yeah.
When you say getting clarity, it's like mental clarity, emotional clarity, or clarity.
Okay, so what I'm talking about is really about helping people to get the clarity in terms of their life, what are things that they can do, but right now with more informed decisions, with more information to make that decisions.
Make that decision.
Yes.
Got it. So interesting. Yes, Lee.
I've held at least 5 different jobs in this 10 years. So there was a lot of skepticism in terms of certain jobs that I applied for, because maybe people thought it was going to be challenging, or because usually they were a new role and there was no precedence, and there was a lot of questions around whether the role would be successful or not and how would that work. So when things like that happen, actually, when other people are having doubts, it didn't really faze me. I actually liked that it was a trailblazer role. So I think that leans a little bit into my Everest journey, and maybe just fundamentally, I like to look at how things can be different and to be able to pave a way that is different from how other people had seen it. And also that belief that, despite all that skepticism, if I can see some way forward or some direction, which is somewhat like Everest, right? I have a goal and then I work towards it. So similarly, every role has a key success metric that I need to work towards. So if I know that key success metric well and I can see that goal, then I just basically leverage the toolkit.
Yeah.
And that's really how I managed to find success in that specific role. And also in other parts of my roles in the company, I had to roll out a lot of new innovations. And again, it's the same vein of theme, right? Which is uncertainty, questions, there's new innovation. So do people know what it's going to look like? There's going to be doubt. And we were the same when we were a team.
Yeah.
A lot of people had questions about, were you going to succeed? Is it good to, give up on your career for this climbing, which seems like a hobby at that time. So same thing, but just different context. And I guess when you're clear about what is it that you want and you try and find something that delivers value actually, and you work towards it with a team. So nothing I did was a one-man effort,
right.
Even at work. And getting my team together and engaging people along the way and having that communication with them, exciting them, working together, collaborating as a strong teammate. I think all that was what got me to successes in the various roles that I did. And I think they just had a lot of similarities between Everest journey and work.
Wow. Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah. And I think like Li Hui in my corporate role, I work at the intersection of strategy, innovation, R&D, and new technology investments, right? And so a lot of my role in the company is to challenge the status quo in a search for what's new and over the horizon that we can start to think about for the future and hence bring it in-house, right? And so by default, I would say a lot of my work tends to be sort of pushing against the tide, right? To try to either change the direction or to introduce something that's new that hasn't been done. And you can imagine for a company that's 175 years old, it's not always the easiest. So I think a lot of what I learned from Everest, right? I think especially in terms of how do you bring people from very different backgrounds together, because someone who's an R&D scientist is going to be different from someone who's an investor to a salesperson, right? How do you draw a common frame of reference between different groups of people so they can work together? Just like what Hui said, very cross-functional team. And I think for me, the second thing was also when you have a big chunky goal that's new tech, that's in the future, how do you chunk down that visionary idea into things that's very palatable, right? Because for example, like us, over 5 years, it will be actually very mentally stressful and very daunting to say, we're going to climb Everest, this massive mountain that no other female in Southeast Asia has done, right? That will be very daunting. And similarly, if I were to say, we're going to enter this entirely new market we've never done, it's really daunting. But then how do you eat that little elephant one bite at a time, right? And I think for us, in the Everest team, was very much, okay, this year, here's a 5-year plan. Year 1 will do X, year 2 will do Y, right? So similarly at work, that's what I try to do as well, which is, yes, we have an overarching strategic goal, but what is the intermediate steps that we can take, like little KPIs that like your little wins that you then feel good about and you build on.
Yeah. Okay, I'm sure you had your own kind of challenges along the way. Can you talk to me about were there moments of doubt where you thought, should we give up? Did you go through that firstly? If yes, I'm assuming by your smiles, yes, or no. But if you did, how did you overcome that? Because that's, again, a constant thing in life, right?
Maybe I share like something that the entire team went through.
Sure.
Because I think every single one of us would probably have our own doubts, but that'll be our own little story. But what the team went through was, actually the team was meant to summit in 2008. So we talked about a 5-year journey, but actually at that time in 2004, the goal was to train for 4 years and then summit in 2008. But the thing is, we needed a sum of money to go. It was $500,000 at that time. And in 2008, we didn't have enough funds for the entire team, $500,000 to go.
Yeah.
We only had funds for around 2 climbers to go. And so at that time, there was a very crucial decision that needed to be made, which is, do we send 2 climbers and then have that trial attempt and then that's like our job done? Or do we postpone a year and try our best to find the funds? Or what else? Like, do we borrow money? Do we take a loan and so on? Because at that time, I think we were all young and just out of school and we didn't have enough savings. So it was a very trying time for us. And it was a lot of doubt seeded in us. Like, did we do something wrong? Did we not focus enough on fundraising? And then we also like self-blame, right? Like we shouldn't have relied entirely on this particular PR firm who said that they would raise the funds for us. We had a lot of like exchanges and eventually we basically decided, hey, we want to do this as a team. Let's just, put our foot down. We will just announce that we're going to climb it next year. And in that 1 year, we really take things into our own hands and then find a way to raise the funds and make it happen. And we really did it. We had 4 years to raise $500,000. We couldn't, but then in 1 year, we managed to raise the funds. And that's really because, you have this reinvigorated kind of goal and everyone just put their foot down and really worked hard at cold calling and all that to make it happen.
Wow.
So I guess, to your question, it was really, maybe sometimes you just need that trigger and sometimes obstacles are you just go through it and then and you just lean into people and in that 1 year that's what we did. We leaned into a lot of strangers, people. We just told everyone our goal and different people came in and became our friends, supporters, and it was so amazing. It was like this community that we built.
Wow.
And really it's about the whole community, or rather perhaps the whole universe conspire to make your dream come true. Yeah, it's not just about us toiling in the back, trying to make it happen, but really when you announce it that this is our intention and make it very publicly known, that somehow things fall in place. Although there's a lot of obstacles along the way.
Yeah. Okay. Jane, anything from you?
Well, maybe a slightly different perspective, right? But I would say for me in all those years, the strongest self-doubt, less about climbing the mountain, and then was more about my role as the leader, right? So I was the leader of the team and I was also the youngest, right? So it was a role that happened to me, right? Like I took it on at the start to get it going. I always expected to pass it on. And the rest of the team members, smart as they were, rejected, right? And so I think this gave me a very interesting perspective on leadership as a role that sometimes you grow into, right? It wasn't something that I set out to achieve, right? Like I really just wanted to focus on the climbing. I didn't want the extra responsibility or the extra tasks. I just wanted to put my head down, and just focus on the climbing, right? But it was a role that I had to grow into. And then I was very fortunate that I had teammates who were more experienced, right? Like Peh Gee. She was a ranking officer in the Singapore Armed Forces, right? So she gave me a lot of mentorship in structuring and how do you lead people. And so I think I was fortunate to have those mentors within the team. And we also had a coach, right? Kim Boon, who was incidentally also had a military background. I think I built up a lot of that sort of structured leadership through my own teammates, right? But I would say I struggled with that a lot. And over the years, I really had to sort of remind myself that I had a dual role. So I had to, yes, climb the mountain, but I also had a team to look out for.
Wow. Yeah, that must have come in handy in your corporate job.
Yes, exactly. And I think especially now in my role, I'm typically the youngest person in a team. Again, because I'm in a company that's been around for 175 years. I've been in this company now for a bit over 3 years, which is really funny because most of my colleagues have been there for 30.
Yeah.
And then when I show up at the same leadership meetings, they're like, why are you here? Right. And so I think from the Everest team experience, I think that gave me a lot of, I think two things. Like, first of all, it gave me a lot more self-confidence that you might be young, but you still have a voice and you definitely have a perspective that's worth sharing, right? Yeah. And I think the other thing that it also gave me is that maybe I would, maybe hazard a guess to say maybe more so than some of like a more confident leader, I think I'm someone who's very open to asking for input and asking for help, right? Because I think that was how I developed my leadership style, which was asking teammates like Peh Gee, who was more experienced, hey, how would you do this? Yeah. Teach me, right? And so I think in my role as a leader, I think I'm very, very open. And I think I would like to imagine that started from my time at the Everest team.
Yeah, I don't want to add on to what Jane has said. And because of her open consultative style, it allows the members to anchor different aspects of the team.
Yeah.
For example, Li Hui was the one who really, the marketing head. That allows us to raise 500 million in 1 year. Yeah, she spearheaded the effort and leads the team in that area. Yeah, like Joanne, she's handled the expedition logistics. Yeah, then we have different roles within the team that we put. Yeah,
you are the team who climbed Mount Everest, and again, I'm feeling so proud sitting with all of you. And Rewrite the Rules is about bringing out these stories, but we also have a lens which you may like or not like, is the women lens, right? Because we want to bring out the female stories. And so I want to ask you that question because Jane, you did say that 2 years prior to that, we'd had a men's team go there, or maybe two men's team, and there wasn't a female team. Was there that lens at all of gender, or you were just like, no, we want to climb?
I think there was less. Even though we call ourselves the Singapore Women's Everest team, there was genuinely less of a us versus them kind of mindset. Yeah. And it was really more a curiosity. And I think because of that curiosity, we thought, hey, why don't we have a team of women, right? But that really stemmed from curiosity rather than competition.
Yeah. Lovely. Individually or personally, is there a story that's kind of, stuck with you, that stayed with you from all these years of training, climbing, reaching there, and even after that?
I think for me is I have the experience of not submitting one of the mountains. And that mountain, as I told you, is meant to be a rehearsal mountain for Everest.
Okay.
So when I did not submit that mountain, I was filled with a lot of self-doubt. Yeah. And if I can't even submit this rehearsal mountain, what makes me think that I could do the real thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then it was the experience of, or rather the fortunate experience of having a teammate, Joanne, who was my tent mate, to remind me that, this is not the end. Why are you giving up now? Yeah. So this is, I would say, something that I always remember about not giving up on myself when the end is not even here, or when the destination is not even reached yet. Probably the second one that I want to share about is that, and because throughout the years of training and climbing Everest, there's a lot of pressure about whether I can make it or not, and things like that, and whether I can really succeed in climbing a mountain. And this whole pressure really makes my climbing very painful. So much so I don't really enjoy climbing. Yeah. But somehow I'm going back in the mountains again to climb. Yeah. So it's like I keep asking, why are you doing this? Why, when you're not enjoying, why are you doing this? Yeah. So it was only on the night of the summit push, when I started to climb out of tent and started my journey to the summit itself. That was in the late night where this was pitch dark all over. And then I was just telling myself, you have come so far. You have come so far, and whatever happens, happens. And it was that moment that I felt that was this load that's lifted off my shoulder.
Wow.
And then suddenly I felt the peace and the bliss of climbing. That one step ahead, once I don't think of anything, just go ahead. And that was the only time that I felt, climbing is a joy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So profound.
Yeah.
So profound. I love that because, as you said, there is pressure of performance. And when you get off that pressure of performance, when you start to enjoy what you're doing, that's when real success comes. And that's when it becomes a joy. And as you said, journey becomes a destination. Awesome. Yeah. I think people can relate to that in so many different ways, in so many different parts of their life, right? Thanks for sharing that.
I think one of the incidences that really stuck in my mind, and I think Lee alluded to it, was around, like, it was in 2008 when we postponed the climb, right? Because I think at that point, there were sort of a couple of big decisions that we had to make. And, and although now in hindsight, we make it sound like, we had to decide between 2008 and 2009. It sort of sounds quite flippant.
Yeah.
But there were some key considerations. For example, we already had some sponsors, right? And we did promise a certain date. We had put it on our website, we're going to climb in 2008. We had a patron, Dr. Vivian Balakrishnan, right? Who's we had a minister as a patron. We did not want him to look bad. We did not want him to take away his patronage. And so there were some of these big decisions, right? We thought, first of all, there were already a lot of detractors and people who didn't believe we could make it. And now if we say, we're going to postpone, how does that look upon us? And would our existing sponsors pull out, right? So I think that was quite traumatizing. And I think I had to decide that together with my co-leader, Hui. And so two of us were like, we're like uni students, right? Our biggest problem is supposed to be final exams. And then now we're like thinking about this, right? It was very stressful, right? And I think for me at that point when we said, remember, if we come back to our foundational belief, which is what is best for the team, right? And we said we will do this as a team. If we only have enough funding to send 2 people, sure, it's a duo, right? But how are we then being fair to the rest of the team, to the rest of the 4 who have been training? And then, is it just lip service when we say best for the team? And if we have sponsors who don't believe in that, then maybe we were not the right fit to begin with, right? And so I think that part for me was really like rubber hits the road, right? When we say team versus, like a personal objective, do we mean what we actually say? And I think for me, that was the time when I thought, wow, okay, we actually, when we were properly tested, we did pick what was best for the team. Yeah.
Wow. Maybe?
I have so many, but then maybe if I would choose maybe 2 that I would share. So one is about how if we were to generically call the Everest a success, right? So then I would say the journey to success can be rather lonely, because people don't celebrate with you until you are successful. And so that journey in that 5 years, colleagues were asking me, why are you doing this? Parents were asking us, can you not do it? Can you just do your day job? Can you not go travel? They think we're having fun. And they think that is super dangerous and of course concern, but just they didn't think it's worth it. No one really thought it was worth it. And then people felt like, can you guys make it? You guys look like, just young girls. We were not even, I think we were more muscular now than at the time. So and then even we were doubting ourselves, right? But then we were putting in the hours. The training was at least 6 to 7 days a week. On top of that, work. On top of that, team meetings. On top of that, our individual responsibilities within the team. So it was really towards the last few years, 100% of our time was all committed to the team. There was no social life. There was no hanging out with friends. And so you give up a lot. You sacrifice a lot for that uncertainty of that dream. And you don't even know if you're successful. And then you have all these detractors. And so it can be really lonely. But then what I learned from that is find your community, find your support group, and then, and then like see who's along the way with you. And accolades that come after, like just be humble, because it's nothing much, right? It's who was with you at that struggle that was the most important. So that's like maybe my takeaway. Like it will always be difficult before it gets amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true. No, I can just imagine, just listening to your stories is giving me a little bit of goosebumps, making those tough calls, making those tough decisions. And I mean, 5 years is a long time to train and to continue to deal with uncertainty. I must admit that before I was just kind of doing a little bit of prep in terms of what I should ask all of you and things like that. And I thought, okay, this is going to be a lesson on resilience and, and which it is. I mean, all of you've talked about, your self-doubt, but there are really two key takeaways I'm taking from this episode and our listeners are going to get. One is when you are dealing with uncertainty, look at things that are certain, look at things that you're sure of, right? Your toolkit, as you said, or all your trainings. The other one was small wins. Look at the success that's happened before, And I loved, Li Wei, when you said that it's during that time when you're working is like who's with you, because you've still not got success. You still have to continue to work. So putting your head down and working hard to make it work, and then enjoying the success with people who had been with you in that journey. So I think individually, that's a big takeaway for all of us. Plus, of course, the journey is the destination. But the other unexpected takeaway for me was also, how do you build high-performing, resilient teams? You really gave a lesson on that, like a masterclass on that. And if I were to kind of extrapolate that in the in the corporate world, that's what high-performing teams do. If there's a big company goal, they work towards it, support each other, be there for each other. And as you said, a youngest could be a leader, but fall back on, people with more experience. So you've really given us a masterclass on teams, how to lead and how to be part of high-performing teams. So I really love that. Thank you so much. I'm sure our listeners are going to get a lot from this. But before we go, I have my favorite question, which I want to ask all of you, is what is one rule that you all have rewritten individually? What's that one rule?
To index performance less on how well we have stuck to the plan.
Yeah.
Right. So if I think about my corporate role, a lot of our KPIs are based on what did you say in the strategy and how closely did we align to that, right? But instead, what I try to push for in my teams is how quickly have we managed to pivot when we have new information, right? So what are some KPIs by which I can actually measure how strong is this toolkit that we have, our ability to deal with uncertainty and improvise and pivot as we need, versus I will doggedly stick to the plan because I said I would, even in the face of new information.
Lovely. Yeah. That's your rule.
I didn't prepare for this, but I just coming up with something off the top of my head.
Yes.
I think you can have fun doing serious things.
Oh, love that. That's such a cool rule
because
to rewrite.
Like climbing Everest is serious, right? It's life and death.
Yes.
But then you can't imagine the things we get up to.
Maybe some of us do. Maybe some.
Like I'm laughing right now thinking about all the crazy stupid things that we did, but we did. And it can be something as silly as in the tent, we have a tent pole, and then someone just wrote pole dancing allowed on a sticker and stuck it there. And then like all the different windows in our tents, we just kind of said like portal to Bali because everyone was so cold. We just want to go on a tropical vacation. Yeah. So it's something silly like that.
Yeah.
To like funny poses that we make, to like just, dancing and singing at night, when doing like our rest days and many other things. So like you don't have to be serious all the time doing things. You need to have fun while you're doing serious things. And that's how you come together as a team. That's how you then enjoy each other's company. And if you enjoy it, then the journey becomes less arduous. Yeah. And then you also, gain friends and gain community along the way. So
that's the rule you've rewritten.
Yes.
And I love that. And actually, yes. Yes,
there's a light in each of us.
Mm-hmm.
We come together, not all of us have the experience of mountaineering or climbing. In fact, I think probably half of the team that submitted Everest have zero mountaineering experience. And I would say that let's not see that the light in us is so small. It's up to us to tune it up.
Tune up.
Yeah.
Lovely. That's the rule we're writing. Don't go with the light you have. Tune it up. Right? Perfect. Great. Thank you so much, ladies. I'm sure there's a lot that our listeners are going to get. Like I said, not only from your collective stories individually, but also, inspirational. And I'm waiting when the next women's team, Singapore team, is going to go up that summit again. Let's just wait for that. Thank you.
Thank you for
Thank
having
you,
us.
Ritu.
Ritu.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.